USA Today had this piece on the probability of a draft in the US given the current geopolitical situation. And they said a draft would recruit people aged 20 to 25, then 19-year-olds, then 18-year-olds in that order, based on the age you turn in the year of the draft. And the more I looked into it, a draft was common occurrence in the 20th century with over 16 million young men drafted between World Wars One and Two and the Korean and Vietnam Wars. And that wasn't that long ago. And it scares the heck out of me. It's so terrifying that I did a little more digging into it. First, I am so annoyed by these news sites. The number of ads makes me want to go back to paper newspapers. It was absolutely brutal doing any research on news sites. And one of the sites I pulled from, not USA Today, it's called OperationMilitaryKids.org. Kind of a weird name, but it seemed like it had a good purpose to educate young people on the military and its opportunities. But they had ads almost exclusively for IQ tests, which after researching who is more predisposed to join the military, it kind of felt like a targeted ad. For the nitty gritty, today, nearly all men aged 18 to 25 are required to be registered with the Selective Service System, and you're registered regardless of whether there's an active draft in place. There are exemptions for if you're already in the military, if you're disabled, incarcerated, institutionalization, and it kind of means that once you turn 26, you're in the clear, and also women aren't in the pool of draftees. Normally you register when you get your driver's license, so you're almost certainly in the draft, and it's illegal not to be registered. To truly understand the likelihood of a draft and the likelihood of actually being drafted, we have to look at the history of the draft. The last draft was associated with the Vietnam War and took place yearly in the 1960s through 1973. Over 10 years, there was a draft every year. And the Vietnam War seems the most comparable to what we're experiencing now. Neither were complete world wars, Vietnam or what's going on in Iran. And the draft numbers in World War II were absolutely astounding. Several times they drafted more men in 1 year for World War II than they did for the entire 10 plus year war in Vietnam. So for the Vietnam era drafts, there are about 27 million eligible men over the time period. And the drafts resulted in the conscription of approximately 1.9 million individuals. So less than 10% of the eligible men were drafted. And actually, in the battle in Vietnam, only 25% of the troops in combat zones were draftees, and which was about 650,000 draftees saw combat of the about 2 million. And it's important to note that many voluntarily enlisted in the Vietnam era because it meant you had greater control over your assignment as opposed to being forcibly conscripted. The thing about the draft, though, is that not many are willing, hence the draft. So 15 million of the 27 million eligible men to be drafted were granted deferments, mainly related to higher education and medical exemptions, which caused much controversy in the 1960s. The issue was that the draft method of the 60s was to randomly pull names, and you would be called to be evaluated by your local draft board made of local community members. Needless to say, this introduced obvious bias, and individuals from families with money or political sway or both would influence the draft board. You could also evade the draft legally by being in university or having a medical exemption from a doctor, which may be necessary for some people, but it seems like if your family was well off enough to have a family physician, there were doctors writing exemptions for people to legally dodge the draft, kind of a gray area. And the aftermath of this system was that the vast majority of individuals drafted were from poor farm communities, and there was a lot of pushback for this. This system was scrapped in 1970, the draft of 1970, and the government solved this by going on TV, like the Hunger Games or something, and they drew capsules with days of the year in each capsule. The earlier in the drawing your birthday was, the theoretically higher likelihood you had at being reviewed for conscription. Then they did another lottery where they drew letters and associated each letter of the alphabet with a number. And the lower the sum of your three initials, the higher likelihood you had at being selected as compared to other people with your birthday. In 1970, before it was all said and done, they had reviewed individuals for the first 195 days pulled from the lottery. It made me wonder how they could review 195 days of the 366 days in the lottery, but only conscript 162,000 of the millions in the pool that year. My understanding is that this is attributable to the gray area draft evasion practices, of which people would be in school or use their money to their advantage or have a doctor's exemption. And they went so far into the lottery because they had to draft individuals who didn't have the sway of someone else to stand up for them, which would of course happen again today, God forbid a draft. I know without a shadow of a doubt that Barron Trump, who turned 20 years old this year, would not get drafted. And neither would any children of politicians or other individuals making these decisions. To date, there's been some buzz about the military extending the age to 41 to 42 for certain branches, but that's only for voluntary enlistment, not the draft. No middle-aged men are being drafted, okay? And the U.S. has almost 1.2 million active duty across all branches of military, 500,000 in the Army being the largest group. And currently there are less than 10,000 American troops assembled in the Middle East, with supposedly no boots on the ground in Iran yet, although there have been 13 deaths attributed to the Iran war so far. And a draft would have to be authorized by Congress and the president, which the president has indicated he's not shutting down that option yet. However, this war is not widely supported by Republicans, much less the entire public or the Democrats. So I think the situation would have to get really, really bad for a draft to be on the board. And it would almost certainly destroy what's left of Trump's reputation, what's the little of what's left. This sort of event also, I think, would pull people out of the woodworks, and disapproval would only grow, in my opinion. So if it's bad now, an actual draft would make it horrible. All in all, the news is indicating that the likelihood is low, although no one can predict the future. To put it into perspective, we currently have over 1 million active military, and during Vietnam, we had about 9 million active military throughout the dozen-year-long war, and 1.5 million saw combat. So for this war in Iran to result in a draft, it would take a lot. Right now, it's small scale in terms of people, and if it went boots on the ground, who knows? And Iran's a lot bigger than Vietnam land-wise, although the terrain is different, which we know proved to be a big issue in Vietnam. My point being that I don't think any of us can conceptualize what 16 million people being drafted does to multiple generations of the 20th century, but I certainly feel like it banded together an entire country under communal grief and hardship. It's not to say that there weren't social issues of the 20th century. I just feel like it made a lot of strong people. There's a quote that goes, "Hard times make strong people make good times make weak people make hard times," and the loop continues. I think we're at the start of some hard times, and this doesn't mean I support a draft to go fight a war in Iran, but I do think we could embrace the hard times for what they are, and be proactive in being the change that we want, and realize that we can grow together and we'll be stronger on the other side. I know without a doubt we are softer than the generations that grew up in World War I and experienced the Great Depression and World War II, because times have been generationally good for the most part, which isn't our fault, obviously. We're simply a product of our circumstances. And I think we have a lot of room to grow in the toughness and strength category, because we've experienced life on a silver platter compared to some of our previous generations.